It's a very bad time to be an officer in the Russian Navy right now. No matter where they look, there's failure. Sensitive military secrets are being stolen. An aircraft carrier, which was supposed to be one of the Navy's main ways of projecting power, is dead in the water. And both submarines and ships are being wrecked. It'd be hard to blame a Russian naval officer for looking over their shoulder every few minutes right now. These are the sorts of problems that cause accidental falls from windows. The reality is that the Russian Navy is collapsing on all fronts as it's failed at absolutely everything over the past few weeks. First, there's the ship that's supposed to be one of the jewels in the Russian naval crown, the Admiral Kuznetsov. To this day, that ship stands as the only aircraft carrier in Russia's navy, making it key to the country's ability to project power to the rest of the world. Granted, even in its heyday, the Admiral Kuznetsov wasn't exactly the most impressive aircraft carrier, making it more of a tarnished jewel than a sparkling diamond. Still, it was important to Russia. Naval technology reveals why, noting that the carrier is capable of displacing 58,600 tons of water and can move at speeds up to 29 knots over a maximum range of 8,500 nautical miles. Those two last stats reveal why the Admiral Kuznetsov was a tarnished jewel from the start. On the speed front, the Aviation Geek Club points out that the Nimitz-class aircraft carriers the US operate can sustain speeds of up to 35 miles per hour, which is equivalent to about 30 knots. That's faster than Russia's carrier, but not so much faster that the disparity is outright embarrassing. What is embarrassing is the Admiral Kuznetsov's range limitations. That demonstrates that Russia's aircraft carrier is running an outdated Mazout fuel system at a time when America's aircraft carriers predominantly run on nuclear power. US nuclear carriers can operate for decades without refueling the reactor. The Admiral Kuznetsov has to return to port or be refueled at sea every 8,500 nautical miles if it travels at 18 knots. Still, Russia's outdated carrier has its uses. It can support 12 Su-27K fixed-wing aircraft, along with several types of helicopters. The National Security Journal also points out that it can support MiG-29 and Su-33 jets, making it at least somewhat versatile. The ship also has a Granit anti-ship missile system and a Klinok air defense missile system, both of which ensure it packs a pretty powerful punch if it gets into a naval battle. Even a so-so aircraft carrier is still a good asset to have, considering that most nations don't have one, right? Don't be so sure about that. The reality is that the Admiral Kuznetsov has been a source of humiliation for Russia for most of its existence. It was only launched in 1985 and officially commissioned into service in January 1991, says the National Security Journal. It managed to spend a little over 2 decades in service before it was pulled into port in 2017 for extensive repairs. Those repairs have never been completed. Russia's only aircraft carrier is still in the same place that it's been for 8 years at this point. And frankly, it's better that way. The Admiral Kuznetsov has had a career that has seen it bounce from one catastrophe to another during its service. There were the funding issues, for one thing. Being commissioned in 1991 doesn't mean the Admiral Kuznetsov was actually being used. It wasn't until 1995 that the ship became fully operational, and even then, it cost an arm and a leg to run, meaning operations weren't exactly common. At various points during its service, the Admiral Kuznetsov was involved in a 300-ton oil spill off the Irish coast, and saw 5 of its jets crash into the ocean after the wires supporting them snapped or they simply ran out of fuel, says Euromaidan Press. On more than one occasion, Russia's aircraft carrier ran out of fuel, forcing it to be tugged back to port. There were even deaths on the ship, a spate of which happened on its maiden voyage when a failing water filtration system essentially poisoned several of the carrier's crew. And there were more issues. When it was deployed to Syria, the carrier managed to lose 2 more of its aircraft, the insider reports. Even when it was docked for maintenance, disaster seemed to follow the carrier wherever it went. In October 2018, the dry dock where the ship was stationed sank, causing a multi-ton crane to smash into the Admiral Kuznetsov from a height of 49 feet, damaging its hull and flight deck in the process. Russia: ships that go in for maintenance are meant to be repaired, not take more damage. From the start, the Admiral Kuznetsov has been cursed. It's the world's saddest aircraft carrier, according to the National Security Journal. But it won't be for much longer. Russia's doomed aircraft carrier is finally going to be leaving port after around 8 years of maintenance work. However, Russians can't go around popping champagne corks just yet. Leaving port doesn't mean re-entering service. It's far more humiliating than that. Russia's only aircraft carrier, the one vessel it has that allows it to compete with the US and China's carrier fleet, is officially a lost cause. Russia has given up on it. On July 26, United 24 media reported that Russia is now weighing up the only decision it has left to make about its aircraft carrier. Should it sell or scrap it? Neither option is one that Russia wants to choose, but reality dictates naval decisions, and the reality for the Admiral Kuznetsov is that it's been an embarrassment to Russia for as long as it's been in service. The few times it was actually at service, at least. The insider puts what all of this means into context. Not only the American, but also the Indian and Chinese navies are currently capable of delivering strike aviation to the shores of a potential adversary or ally, something that will significantly affect the balance of power in nearly any potential conflict in the Indo-Pacific region, the outlet says. Russia can't do that anymore. It could barely do it before, given the catalogue of errors that was the Admiral Kuznetsov's career. Russia's aircraft carrier has gone out with a whimper, a massive monument to Russia's naval failure, and it's far from the only one. Next, there's the Kamchatka Peninsula in Russia's Far East. On July 30, a massive 8.8 magnitude earthquake rocked that peninsula. That alone isn't a failing on the part of Russia's navy, but what was a failing is the quake struck mere miles away from the Rybachiy naval base, which the Telegraph says is home to several of Russia's nuclear submarines, including Soviet-era Delta-class submarines and at least one of Russia's more modern Borey-A class subs. The quake itself wasn't the problem, at least according to initial reports. Far more problematic for Russia was the massive tsunami that the earthquake caused, which was so fast and powerful that it's believed to have hit the Russian submarine base just 15 minutes after the earthquake was registered. Waves up to 16.4 feet high were recorded hitting the Russian coast, absolutely swamping the ports and docks Russia had set up for its vital naval base. When the Telegraph published its report, not a lot was known about the scale of the damage the massive earthquake and resulting tsunami caused. The satellite images published a few days later revealed more, showcasing the before and after pictures of the Rybachiy base. Several Russian submarines are seen at the base in images from July 13, meaning it's unlikely that Russia had deployed all of them by the time the quake hit. There are 6 in total in the before picture. Then comes the after picture. While it still doesn't show much, that image, which was taken on July 30, seems to show one of the floating piers broken in two. That's not good news for Russia's submarines. Similar pictures were shared by The Guardian, which point out that the pier seems to be the only major destruction that can be seen from the surface. That phrasing is used because the surface isn't what Russia really has to worry about. According to Euromaidan Press, the Russian Academy of Sciences has revealed that the southern portion of Kamchatka was so drastically affected by the 8.8 magnitude earthquake that it shifted a massive 6.5 feet to the southeast. While that may not seem like a lot, such a dramatic shift is more than enough to damage piers, concrete structures, and perhaps even entire naval bases that happen to be the home to some of Russia's most important nuclear submarines. The full scale of the damage caused by the Kamchatka earthquake may never be known. Russia certainly isn't going to tell anyone. But what is clear is that Mother Nature herself has turned up to punch Russia right in the face with a natural disaster. As CNN also highlights, Russia made a mistake by keeping so many of its nuclear submarines at a single base. It was a cost-cutting measure, claims CNN analyst Michael Peterson, and it's one that may have come back to bite Russia on the rear. And speaking of submarines, Russia just so happens to have a new one that is supposed to be moving through the world's seas and oceans, presenting a covert nuclear threat to the rest of the world. The phrase "supposed to be" is used here because the odds are that any operations that were planned for this submarine have likely been cancelled. Why? Well, a massive leak of military intelligence has revealed to Ukraine, and anybody else who might have an interest, exactly what Russia's newest submarine is all about. Russia would have been very happy if the world only knew the basic details. The new submarine is the Project 955A Borey-A, dubbed the Knyaz Pozharsky, and it's meant to serve as the blueprint for an entire fleet of powerful submarines that reinforce the naval arm of Russia's nuclear triad. The details Russia has released are all in the public domain to strike fear into the hearts of the country's enemies. The new submarine has 16 launch silos, each of which holds an R-30 Bulava-30 intercontinental ballistic missile, capable of holding 10 nuclear warheads, RBC Ukraine reports. It's also a vessel that's the pride of Vladimir Putin. Russia's president personally accepted it for service, having no clue about the absolute fiasco that was about to unfold. That fiasco means that there is now more publicly known about Russia's new nuclear submarine than was ever supposed to be known. On August 3rd, the Defense Intelligence of Ukraine Telegram channel published 10 documents in a single post. At first, it's hard to see what relevance those documents have to anything. Then, when noticing the blueprints for a submarine, the answer becomes clear. These are leaked documents pertaining to Russia's brand new submarines, and they're in the public eye. Head to the Telegram post and see the documents in full. And boy, have those documents revealed a lot of sensitive information. Ukraine says that it now knows the names, positions, qualifications, and even fitness levels of every single member of the Knyaz Pozharsky. Every single one of those crew members is now compromised. Ukraine can use this information to apply pressure, potentially even turning some Russian naval personnel to its side. There's a lot more than that in the documents Ukraine managed to steal. Full combat instructions intended for the Knyaz Pozharsky's crew are now in Ukraine's hands. There are submarine combat diagrams, information about the vessel's survivability systems, and even instructions for the crew's standard operating procedures when working on the vessel. Ukraine even got its hands on the Knyaz Pozharsky's daily operational schedules, giving it detailed knowledge of planned locations and timings. Now it's clear why the phrase "supposed to be" applies. Ukraine may not have revealed everything that it's learned from the leaked documents. There may be much more that its intelligence services are keeping to themselves or only sharing with interested allies, meaning Russia's new nuclear submarine is in a lot of danger until its crew can be replaced and a new schedule can be drawn up. Even then, Ukraine now knows the submarine's weak points. Perhaps that means the US, UK, France, and all of Ukraine's other Western allies know those weak points too. Speculation ran rampant about how Ukraine had managed to pull this massive leak off when it was first revealed. Had Ukraine managed to sneak a covert operative onto the Knyaz Pozharsky, who then stole the document and made their escape? Was a member of the crew turned by Ukraine, leading to the leak? As it turns out, neither of those possibilities appears to be the case. As the Telegraph reported on August 10, Ukraine got its hands on the Knyaz Pozharsky's sensitive document thanks to its growing expertise in an area of the Ukraine war that often gets underreported: the cyber battlefield. It was Ukrainian hackers who managed to break into Russia's submarine systems and steal the documents, and that represents a massive psychological blow for the Kremlin. That's according to Maxim Starchak, who's an expert in Russian nuclear policy. Speaking to the Telegraph, he says, "This is a serious blow to the Russian Defense Ministry and its nuclear capabilities, as it cannot guarantee the secrecy of their plans, missions, and operations. Those plans may not have been as secret as Russia would have wanted them to be in the first place." Starchak points out that the US likely knew a lot of the information that Ukraine revealed already, as it's constantly monitoring Russia's weapons development programs. But that doesn't matter. This is a dangerous situation for Moscow. The Kremlin will try to find the people responsible and punish them strictly, demanding that the Defense Ministry solve the issue of cybersecurity. Starchak says. Heads are going to roll for this one. Or more accurately, open windows are going to become very dangerous for the members of Russia's cybersecurity defense forces who are supposed to prevent hacks like these from ever happening. That's another Russian naval failure in the bag. In one fell swoop, Ukraine revealed how effective its hackers are, how much Russia needs to improve its cyber defenses, and what Russia has come up with for its latest nuclear submarine. That's impressive. But is it as impressive as managing to cancel an entire self-aggrandizing parade because of a drone? In 2017, Putin established Russia's annual Navy Day parade with a special order. Every year since then, the parade has served as a chance for Russia to showcase and celebrate its supposed military might. Ships from Russia's Black Sea, Baltic, Pacific and Northern fleets all take part in a 2-hour fleet review off the coast of St. Petersburg. Similar smaller parades are also held at naval bases around Russia and inside occupied Crimea. Putin is usually in attendance. Pictures shared by the BBC of the 29th iteration of the parade demonstrate what it's all about. Ships are bedecked in celebratory bunting and naval officers are dressed in full ceremonial garb. Helicopters took part in the show during the Crimean version of the parade that year, as did Russian Marines who were pictured firing their guns into the air as they marched. The 2025 version of the parade was meant to follow the same sort of pattern. Granted, it wouldn't be as grandiose a spectacle as the 29 version or most of Russia's other Navy Day parades. But that would be understandable. The Black Sea Fleet would be absent, with Russia likely pretending it's due to that fleet being engaged in the Ukraine war, and not because Ukraine has managed to destroy around 40% of the fleet with drone and missile strikes. Even without that fleet, the crowd would gather in St. Petersburg, and Putin would take his position to oversee proceedings. Only that's not what happened. Mere hours before the parade was supposed to take place, Russia announced that it was cancelling the entire event for security reasons. That's according to France 24, which reported on Kremlin mouthpiece Dmitry Peskov's explanation. It has to do with the general situation, Peskov said in a statement that is as vague as anything has ever been. Security reasons are of utmost importance, Peskov added. Putin later tried to suppress the confusion by claiming that the 2025 Navy Day celebrations would see Russia celebrating the holiday in a working atmosphere. But that didn't seem to mean much to the local authorities in St. Petersburg, who said they weren't given a reason as to why the parade wasn't going to happen. It was just cancelled. End of discussion. Still, there was the mention of a security threat. Had Russia unveiled a grand Ukrainian plane to strike its warships as they paraded around for Putin's pleasure? Maybe there was a plot to assassinate Putin himself at one of the few events where he sits out in the open. As it turns out, it was neither of those potential threats, nor any other major attack that Ukraine had in the works, that forced the cancellation of the 2025 Navy Day parade. It was a drone. One solitary Ukrainian Liutyi drone. The parade and all of its surrounding events were cancelled due to safety concerns as a single Ukrainian Liutyi drone was spotted flying over Leningrad Oblast, Euromaidan press reports. As there were no reports of any confirmed hits, Ukrainians likely simply decided to fly a drone in the general vicinity and let Russia cancel the parade themselves, unable to intercept a possible threat from the skies. There couldn't be any more perfect an expose of Russia's supposed naval power than that. This was a parade that was supposed to feature some of the biggest and strongest warships in the Russian Navy, many of which are equipped with anti-air defenses that are supposed to be able to make mincemeat of drones. Yet, Ukraine managed to shut down the whole event with a single unmanned aerial vehicle that did nothing more than hint at a larger attack. Russia was so terrified of a single drone that its ships went sailing away from the celebration at Putin's orders. Those have been just 4 incidents. All happened within about a week of one another, from the end of July into the beginning of August. Does it still seem as though Russia has one of the most dangerous navies in the world? The evidence of these handful of days suggests otherwise, as humiliation after humiliation has left the country's naval leadership holding their heads in their hands. And the worst of it, this week or so of hell is the least of the problems that Russia faces. In the Black Sea, Ukraine has completely obliterated the Russian Navy to the point where it's become a non-factor in the Ukraine war. Find out how in our video, and remember to subscribe to the Military Show for more videos covering Russia's latest naval calamities.